Let's be friends.
Have you not?
And here we go.
You had paid the price for your...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing and a brand new Ambassadorial Editorial. It's been a while since I've done one of these. It's been a while since I've had need to do one of these, but I'm live back here tonight on the Ambassadorial Wing, and if this is your first visit, welcome, and be prepared for a very interesting stream this evening. I don't do these editorials very often, except when I have absolute need to do so. And tonight I have need to do so. And well, as the clip showed, I'm not in a particularly good mood, but I will try to make this stream this evening entertaining. And of course, if this is your first visit to the Ambassador Wing, welcome one and all. Hope y'all enjoy the stream. Hope y'all are having a good weekend. It is Friday night, start of a brand new weekend, the end of another week. And I have things to say. I've got some things I want to get off my chest. I may put the link out and everything and let some friends come on in and share their thoughts on what I had to say or what they feel as well. But whether you're watching this on YouTube or on Twitter, welcome one and all, and thank you for being here this evening. So, but before I get started, and as I've done the housekeeping, I want to issue a couple of disclaimers before I get this editorial started. If you happen to be a fan of current era Star Wars, or current era Star Wars, this stream, this editorial is not directed against you. If you're a detractor of the current era Lucasfilm, this stream might be right up your alley. But either way, I want you all to know, whether you are a fan or a detractor, you are welcome here. If you happen to disagree with what I'm about to say, I do not hold that against you. I am not here to attack my fellow fans. I am not here to mock or insult my fellow fans. If you like the sequel trilogy, if you like the other media in terms of what Lucasfilm has been putting out in terms of Star Wars content, I do not hold that against you. I, like yourself, am a fan of Star Wars. I have been for as long as I can remember. But I have some things I need to say this evening, and this is the best way for me to do it because honestly, a short on YouTube simply does not do it. Does not do what I have to think, what I have to say, and what I'm thinking justice. But with all that put aside, I want one final disclaimer. My target and the source of my editorial and who I have an issue with is solely at those who work at Lucasfilm. All the way from the tippy top to the execs, all the way down to the writers, and more so especially the writers and the other creatives that have been working on Lucasfilm and since George Lucas sold it to Disney back in 2012. Now, the thumbnail is not just for clickbait. I don't do clickbait. Most of you who follow my channel and who follow me on social media know I don't do clickbait. Each one of those points will be addressed during the course of this editorial. And that includes what I would deem and what I feel other Star Wars fans would deem as plagiarism. a lack of originality, and the decanonization of the old expanded universe, because this is an issue I have long had an issue with, but I have held my tongue until I can no longer do so. So, with all that being said, let's get started, because there's a lot to get to. I've got, like I said, I have a lot to say. Most everybody who follows me on social media, who subscribed to my channel, knows this. Knows this for a fact. I love Star Wars. I have been a long time, you can almost say a lifelong fan of Star Wars since I was a kid. All the way back to the original trilogy, including the prequels and the old expanded universe. I love Star Wars. It's ingrained in me. And I do not say that with any degree of sadness. For the longest time, Star Wars was, and still to a degree is, something I care deeply about. Some of my fondest memories from my childhood and my adulthood do in fact involve this franchise. I was a fan before the term fandom was even coined. I loved Star Wars when it was good, and I loved Star Wars when it wasn't so good or when it was even bad. I have even watched the holiday special, and I do have issues with it, but at the same time, there are parts of it that I love. But with all that being said, as a fan, as a conscientious fan, I have become discontented with what Star Wars has been of late. Now, all of you who follow me know I have done reviews of The Mandalorian, of Kenobi, of Book of Boba Fett. I'm still staying on the fence to see if I want to do reviews of Ahsoka. But you all know I have tried my level best to give current era Lucasfilm and the current Star Wars content a fair chance and a fair shake. I don't want to dislike or hate Star Wars. And I want to preface one other thing as well. During my editorial tonight, I will not be going after the actors who have portrayed the characters in the sequel trilogy or in the 2 anthology films, or even the live action film series themselves. I will critique their characters and their characters alone. A director, a executive, or a writer's social or political views are not the source of my critique tonight. My critique is solely on the stories and the narratives that have been crafted and where I find them either severely lacking or lacking in a way that could be reworked into something better. So if you're expecting me to go on a long-winded rant about how much I hate Kathleen Kennedy or how much I hate Rian Johnson because of a social or political stance that they hold, this is not the stream for you. I'm here to critique their creative decisions and their creative decisions alone. That is where I have my issues. As I said, I have loved Star Wars all my life. I have very fond memories and a few bittersweet memories that involve the Star Wars universe. Most of you who know me know this. I have talked about it numerous times on this channel, both in videos and in live streams alike. But as a fan, as a person of conscience, and as a person who's trying to add, who is working at their own voice to the Star Wars universe, particularly in the realm of fan fiction and fan film and so on, I feel I need to say something. I have been peaceable and patient long enough. So yes, there will be a bit of a critique on my behalf in terms of the sequel trilogy. I guess that's the best place to start, if anywhere. Do I have issues with the sequel trilogy? Yes. Have these issues been discussed ad nauseum? Yes. Did I state some of my issues with the sequel trilogy in terms of when I reviewed The Rise of Skywalker? Oh, yes, I did. When that movie came out, just like many other channels on YouTube, I did a review and I lambasted The Rise of Skywalker. About the only positive things I had to say was in terms of the design of the Sith Temple on Exegol, and that's pretty much it. I can't honestly think of another thing of quality or of merit or of note that I cared for in The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I will say this: The Force Awakens set up set up this new trilogy in an interesting way. But unfortunately, about midway or 3/4 of the way through, it shot its own self in the foot. And all of these issues, every issue with narrative and storytelling and everything else across the board goes back to one fact and one factor alone. And that's the writers. The writers for current era Star Wars are severely deficient. Absolutely severely deficient. And it boggles my mind just how far current era Star Wars has, in essence, sunk. Now, I'm not saying that everything that George Lucas ever wrote was an absolute hit it out of the park, great piece of dialogue that he penned. And I'm not saying that some of the story telling choices that he made were always the best. But at least he either had other creatives around him that could fill in the gaps where he was lacking, or he did his best on his own merits. Now, is George Lucas a truly visionary storyteller? Yes, he is. I would be remiss in saying otherwise. Has he made some mistakes in some of the movies he's made, particularly with Star Wars? Yes, he has. I would be lying to you and to myself if I didn't say that he wasn't. But what I have seen over the last 11 years, because Lucasfilm was sold in 2012, it's now 2023. It's been 11 years with Disney having ownership of Lucasfilm and Lucasfilm under its current regime. That, of course, being under Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau. As much as I have enjoyed much of what they have done, there are severe issues with what has been released. And I'm going to get into that now. And I guess we might as well start where they pretty much started. I've discussed the sequel trilogy. I will come back to it. And that is, of course, with The Mandalorian. Now, originally, The Mandalorian was not going to be about a specific about the character of Din Djarin. It was going to be originally about Boba Fett. But they took that movie concept and they turned it into a series, a streaming series. And I'll be the first to say I didn't have a thing to do with The Mandalorian. Not a thing. I didn't even watch, much less review season 1 at all, because that was how disenfranchised I was from the Star Wars franchise itself. I did one video and I spoke of the good things that were in season 1 of The Mandalorian. but the issues seem to have started to rear their ugly head in terms of less so season 2, but more so season 3. I, as a person who loves Star Wars, I want good stories. I want good storytelling. I want good narrative. I want good character development. I want to be invested and care about the characters that I am spending time watching and interacting with as a viewer. And I gave credit where it was due when I did my reviews of season 3. You can go look at every single one of my reviews. It's all on the playlist for all my Star Wars content. This editorial will be included in that. But there were severe issues with season 3 of The Mandalorian. There were choices that were made that honestly I think were a detriment to season 3 of The Mandalorian. I think them dedicating an entire episode to a side character, that of course being Dr. Pershing, while the episode did have its merits, this was an episode that seemed very out of place for the Mandalorian series, when they could have used that time in that episode for the main character and those affiliated with him. The Mandalorian, Din Djarin, had very little interaction with Dr. Pershing. Now, I know they've had to make some creative decisions in light of them having to cancel the Rangers of the New Republic series, and that they kind of shoehorned some of those elements into season 3 of The Mandalorian. I personally think this was a mistake. If you're going to cancel a series, then you don't try and shoehorn elements of that canceled series into another show, because you disrupt the narrative flow of that series. And it boggles my mind that instead of just leaving something alive, if you're going to cancel it, then cancel it and leave it be, leave it done. But you don't disrupt the narrative flow of a show just to plop something that's sort of related but not directly related to the narrative that you're crafting. It simply doesn't work. I mean, honestly, did we need to see Republic era Coruscant? I won't lie, it was interesting to see, but at the same time, it just felt like a giant cinder block of narrative that was disrupting the flow of the season as it was. You could have spent maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes tops exploring Dr. Pershing and his life and what his ultimate fate was, and then gone back to the main narrative of this series, and that's Din Djarin and Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians. Or you could have even had an episode related to Moff Gideon. I think what I'm trying to get at, folks, is there have been narrative choices, there have been storytelling choices that have hampered and at times damaged the narrative that's been told in these shows. Another one, and I'll bring this up, and this might be the one I focus on most of all. Well, there's two. I recently went back and rewatched Kenobi. And upon a second viewing, I came to realize there were severe issues with Kenobi. And no, I'm not talking about the whole issue of whether or not Kenobi and Vader met again in between the last time they saw each other on Mustafar and when they met again on the first Death Star and A New Hope. That particular story element doesn't bother me. And as much as I enjoyed the character of young Leia, and I did, I felt that particular storyline was not needed. The show was named Kenobi. It should have been about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it should have been, I think, more of a psychological focus series rather than him chasing after young Leia. Now, I'm not by any means faulting the young actress who portrayed young Leia. She did a wonderful job. But I honestly think the decision to focus that time and that attention on that character was an error. Very serious error. Kenobi should have been about the man and what he was dealing with in his life. And what we got, in spite of there being some good moments and some positive elements, overall, it just didn't work. And, you know, I still haven't had a chance to watch the fan edit of Kenobi, and I will probably eventually do so. But from what I have heard from other fellow Star Wars fans and from what I've heard from other commentators online, I think it's called the Patterson cut of Kenobi. A lot of people are saying it's far superior than what we got with the official series. And that's a shame. When a studio who has seemingly limitless or just extreme amounts of resources at their fingertips can't put together a focused narrative for a series and stick to it. Instead, they have to dump in a bunch of other filler that doesn't necessarily amount to diddly squat. Now, yeah, was it great to see Jimmy Smits back as Bail Organa for a couple of scenes? Sure, it was. Was, like I said, was the actress Lyra, oh, for heaven's sakes, Vivian Lyra Blair, who played young Leia, was she good in her part? Yes, she was. But those elements didn't need to be present in a show about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I do want to say hello to the chat, my good friend Ace Mowick. Ace, it is good to see you. Ace, I might be dropping the link here in a little bit if you want to come in and talk with me, or if you got anything you want to say. But right now, I'm just keeping it me and everything at the moment. But it's disappointing when we expected a series that was supposed to explore the mental state of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Instead, we got the adventures of Obi-Wan Kenobi and young Leia. You know, I was talking with my friend Zach Leary. Many of you have seen Zach on this channel. I've talked with Zach and everything. He and I talk on a regular basis, and we were talking about Kenobi itself. And, you know, here's... Fair enough, Ace. I understand. Me and Zach are not professional writers. Well, he is to a degree more so than I. I'm just a rank amateur, and I wholeheartedly admit it. But when you have two people who are, one's semi-professional, one's a rank amateur, and we can put together a better narrative for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and do better than seemingly a bunch of paid professional writers who have been writing for years, seemingly, there's something wrong there. I mean, when me and Zach were talking, I was like, you know, instead of having Leia in there, cut that storyline completely out. Have it focused on Kenobi and the Inquisitors. And you don't even necessarily have to have Vader as... You wouldn't have to have Obi-Wan and Vader even meet face to face. Now, as much as that was a very emotionally packed and powerful scene and everything, their duel at the end, and even their initial duel, there was something severely lacking there. Personally, I felt it would have been better if they had kept Vader as more of a psychological threat or a mental threat rather than them actually meeting face to face, or keep it as one meeting and one meeting only. One face to face confrontation only, not two. And, me and Zach were talking about this. And Zach, if you hear this on the replay or if you come in later, know that I'm speaking only good of what you and I have discussed. Something that I suggested was have the Inquisitors be former Jedi who were either converted or Padawans who were captured and turned into Inquisitors, and have Obi-Wan have to deal with that reality, deal with the Inquisitors being someone that he formerly knew, someone that he formerly fought beside or trained even, or trained with. The Kenobi show had amazing potential, and unfortunately, that potential was not fully realized. Yeah, and that's what I've heard, Ace. And I may eventually either read it or I may listen to the audiobook version of it. But I did. Here's the thing: I didn't have a problem with Kenobi being a broken character in this series, because after everything that he has endured, after everything he has gone through, he is naturally going to be a broken individual. And I would have even preferred maybe not having another similar narrative where it's Obi-Wan and Luke, but maybe focus a little more on Luke instead of Leia. But it is frustrating that it's just gotten to the point where the fandom has become seemingly disenfranchised and willing to sell for lesser quality media than what we're getting. And that's the one big thing that I really have come to realize. And believe me, I take no joy in doing this stream. I take no joy in doing this editorial. But I feel these issues have to be addressed. And maybe they already have been, but you know what? I need to say my piece. If for nothing else, then this be out there for the future. So, and I do want to say hello to the chat, to another good friend and everything, another fellow ambassador, the George. George, it's good to see you, and I'll bring up your comment here, buddy. Just 1 second. My issues with recent Star Wars projects is more what I have had issues with recent Disney projects overall, animation, Marvel, etc. We got a few. We'll get a few special projects, but the majority are mid-level. Yeah, George, I wholeheartedly and candidly agree with you. I don't expect every single show, series, or movie to be the greatest thing ever, but I expect, and this is a sentiment that Zach has shared. My friend Zach Larry, like I said, most of you and I do call Zach my friend because I regard him as such, just like Ace and just like George. Y'all are my friends. You're parts of this community. You're all ambassadors, but you're also my friends. He said this, and I cannot disagree with this sentiment. Zach is first and foremost a fan of quality, as am I. Yeah, Ace, exactly. Broken can make sense if it's consistent with the character and makes sense between stories. Yeah, and I'll bring this up as well, Ace, and everything. And this is as good a segue as any. Another problem is that Disney doesn't even doesn't even create contradicting their own canon. The EU did have problems. Yes, the old expanded universe had its issues. I'm not gonna say it didn't. I'm not gonna say that the old expanded universe was the greatest thing ever, but when it hit, it hit. It when the old expanded universe popped started off, and I count when the old expanded universe started, and that was with the original Thrawn trilogy with Heir to the Empire. And believe me, I will get to that in due course. When the old expanded universe was going back in the 90s and all the way up into the 2000s, we got some absolutely wonderful stories. We got the first Thrawn trilogy. Yeah, no, I understood what you were saying, Ace. You're good. So when the old expanded universe was still going, we got some great stories. We got the first Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. We got a whole slew of great comic book series from Dark Horse Comics. I mean, Tales of the Jedi, The Old Republic, even the stuff and everything that took place after the after the original trilogy, with Dark Empire 2, and Empire's End. Not to mention all of the Clone Wars comics that they did in junction with the Clone Wars with the prequel trilogy. Not to mention all the comics that they did in between the prequels movies. Video games, some of the greatest. Okay, I'm going to say this. Some of the greatest or damn near best video games that were made at the time. The original KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic for the Xbox. Still considered one of the greatest Star Wars games ever made. Star Wars Battlefront, the first one. Wonderful game that really immersed you in the original trilogy and allowed you to play campaigns, do conquests in different formats, all sorts of stuff. I think one of the only PC games I ever played, Empire at War. Great a PC video game. S- Star Wars Starfighter, Star Wars Jedi Starfighter, Republic Commandos. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And now I will preface this. Jedi Fallen Order and from what I understand, Jedi Survivor have been extremely well received. Now, I will say this, I played Jedi Fallen Order. I loved it. I absolutely loved that game. And I will eventually when we get a PS5, I will play Jedi Survivor. I imagine I'll probably love it too. But what breaks my heart and at times breaks my brain is the fact that all of that creativity, all of that hard work, all of that effort and time and passion and talent was decanonized, erased from the Star Wars timeline. Now, does all that media still exist? Yes, it does. Everything in the secondary market on places like eBay and Amazon and so on, and on Facebook marketplaces, it still exists. You can still get your hands on it. And is it worth it? You damn right it's worth it. But the thing that pisses me off the most is that not only was the old expanded universe decanonized, but now it has been, to varying degrees, plagiarized. That right there pisses me off. Current era Lucasfilm and their writers and their creators are taking what other people have worked so hard to create, and they're using it to bolster their own shoddy writing and their own shoddy narratives. That pisses me off. And yeah, I am a little angry at that fact. And I'll give you 3 particular examples. Well, I'll give you a few particular examples because I can't remember every single one, but I can. Okay, well, I can give you 3 separate examples. The first one was the resurrection of the Emperor for the Rise of Skywalker. Now, for anybody who has read any of the content from the old expanded universe, and in particular Dark Empire, everybody knows that that was the main plot point of Dark Empire. The fact that Palpatine had bodies, clones made of himself, and that he transferred his essence from one body to another. That was plagiarized and used in a movie that didn't deserve that quality of writing and that quality of creativity. Now, I know people have had critiques of Dark Empire and Dark Empire 2 and Empire's End, and that's fair. But here's the thing. The old expanded universe stood on its own. You could connect it to the original trilogy or even to the prequels if you wanted to. Or it could stay disconnected in its own timeline. Existed outside of the movies. But to take something from an old expanded universe story and use it because you like the creativity to come up with a better story yourself is woefully and egregiously lazy. And the one thing I hate and the one thing I cannot stand is lazy storytelling. Now, I'm no professional writer. I will never claim to be. But I have busted my ass to construct and write my own version of the sequel trilogy. Now, I've written one part of it, but I'm starting to put together my storylines, my notes for the first 2 episodes, for the first 2 parts of my own trilogy. And I will tell you all right now, it has not been easy, but it has been damn rewarding to do it. Yeah, and I'll bring up your comments here, Ace. And guys, I'm not gonna apologize, but if you feel like I'm getting heated, I feel in this instance it's warranted. So, anyways, Ace says I dig Fallen Order. I can't even put aside I can even put aside my problem with the concept of cutting yourself off of the Force. It was that good. Yeah, Ace, it was that good. As my buddy Zach would say, he is a fan of quality, as am I. And I'll bring up your other comment here, Ace, just a minute. Plagiarism is accurate, but they can't even plagiarize completely. I hope they never touch Revan. Well, they already did that. If you remember, they've referenced him in The Rise of Skywalker. Kyle Katarn and Corran Horn, especially Mara Jade. Yeah. Because knowing them, they'll probably screw those characters. They would probably screw up those characters too. But it breaks my heart and it breaks my brain to see other people's work be plagiarized because someone else lacks the creativity to craft their own damn story. And I'll bring up a couple of more examples here. And this is something a little more recent. And I've done some shorts on. I've done a short on this. The character of Rey. I'm assuming it's currently in development, or maybe pre-production, and writing is currently on hold because of the writer's strike. Fair enough. But ever since the announcement of the Rey movie, and more details have come out in regards to it, to say I am well and rightfully pissed is beyond is an understatement. And you know what? I'm gonna play this clip because I'm gonna be using this clip throughout the night, or throughout this editorial. So just give me a minute.
Pay the price for your lack of vision.
I think that says it well enough. It just, and okay, if you like the character of Rey, which I'm married to someone who does, Ma'am Ambassador loves the character of Rey. She connected with her, and hey, that's her prerogative to do so. I will not berate or belittle her for it. But not only, they're doing a movie on a character that the majority or a good chunk of the fandom doesn't care for, and in some instances outright hates. But now they are taking a storyline that was already done, and already done twice. Once in the old expanded universe, and once in the new, what I call the new expanded universe. The current expanded universe that's supposed to connect everything to all the movies and TV shows and everything else together. For those of you who remember, and if you don't, here's a refresher. And to my friend, and one that I've mentioned a few times now, Mr. Zach Leary. Zach, it's good to see you, buddy. Worst line of all time, like a bantha. I can think of a few others, although I will say this is a gem right here. I'll say this is a gem right here. Hang on, because this is what I would call a good line. It's almost a prophetic line. And don't worry, I'll get to my other 2 points here in just a minute. I'll get back to the. But I love this line. I'm not gonna lie. I love this line. Okay.
Not how the Force works.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. They fly now? Yeah, absolutely cringe. That is gotta be one of the Lord. That's a pretty bad line, but that one I just played, that's a good line. Okay. Not only are they doing a Rey movie, okay. Fair enough. But what story are you gonna tell? She's gonna rebuild the Jedi Order. That's already been done! Twice! In the old and new expanded universes. And guess who did it? Luke. So, you're taking a character that pretty much everybody either has forgotten or to varying degrees dislikes or detests. A character that was herself so poorly written that it's taking a guy who has no formal creative writing experience to write a better story for. And now you're going to have her do the exact same thing that Luke Skywalker already did. Rebuild the Jedi Order. And not to mention, they are putting a director who is completely and utterly out of her depth, who has done nothing of merit and nothing of worth. Okay, nothing of notable merit in her entire directing career. Thank you, Ace. They make bad lines for memes now. That's not how memes work. Yeah, Ace, you're not wrong. And I'm thinking to myself when I heard this news drop, and yes, it is official. This is what Rey is going to do in her movie. She's going to rebuild the Jedi Order. And that brings me to the third point. No originality. They can't come up with an original story on their own without referencing something else, plagiarizing something else, or decanonizing and then plagiarizing something else. It makes my blood boil and it makes my brain hurt. It really, truly does. I'm sitting here busting my ass to create a version of the sequel trilogy that I think makes more sense than a room full of writers who've done it professionally for I don't know how many years. It took me a year, a solid year, to sit down and write, first on my phone and then transfer to my computer, my version of The Rise of Skywalker, except I actually came up with an original title. I scoured the titles of every known official Lucasfilm Star Wars story, book, title episode, movie title, everything, to make sure that I came up with something original. And something that made sense to the narrative I'm telling in that story. And now, and I want to preface this, if the news is true, Dave Filoni, a man that I have on various occasions praised for his work, can't even come up with an original title for his own damn movie. If the news is true, he's using the title of Heir to the Empire for his own movie. That is beyond obscene to me. It pisses me royally off. It breaks my heart because Timothy Zahn, a man who has worked in the Star Wars franchise, has written some of the best novels put out there. The original Thrawn trilogy, especially. The original, the trilogy that pretty much on its own launched the old expanded universe. It's not easy coming up with titles for stories. It's not easy coming up with titles for books or for movies or whatever. You have to sit down. You really have to get those creative juices flowing. And Dave Filoni's is like, oh, let's just borrow something from the old expanded universe. Dave Filoni, you lazy ass. Yeah, and I'll bring up your comment here. Here's the thing. I'm not going to rake Dave Filoni over the coals as much as other people would have, or will. I'll call balls and strikes. I'll call him out for when I'll give him credit when he does well, but also I'll criticize him when he does badly. In terms, if like I said, I want to preface this very heavily. This has not been officially announced by Lucasfilm. But if it is in fact true that he's using the title of Heir to the Empire for his story, it pisses me the hell off. He didn't come up with that on his own. Timothy Zahn did. And I'll say this: he came up with an interesting character in the character of Ahsoka Tano. Did she have some issues when she was originally introduced in the Clone Wars animated series? Yeah, she did. But they got better. They got better people to work on her character. They corrected a lot of her character flaws and so on. But it just, and this character is his baby. So yeah, they wrote it out for her to not die when she faced Darth Vader in Rebels. And they came up with a cool concept in terms of the world between worlds. I'm not gonna fault him for that, because those are some cool original ideas. But to recycle a title that's already been used from a book to a movie is just disgraceful and lazy. And that's not what I want Star Wars to be. I don't want it to be lazy. I want these writers and I want these directors and I want these producers to bust their asses to bring us something of worth. And that kind of brings me to my next point. The Book of Boba Fett. Now, when we had that stinger, when we had that post-credit scene at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, and we saw Boba Fett march into Jabba's palace with Fennec, and he just took out Bib Fortuna, just stone cold killed his ass. That was a badass scene. It was. That was an absolute badass scene. Not to mention when Boba was introduced, both off screen and on, in The Mandalorian. That worked. That was adding in a character that brought something new and brought something interesting to the series itself. And then they thought, okay, let's do a series. Let's do a series on Boba. And we were all excited for it. I was excited for it. But just like with Kenobi, they got lazy. And I'm going to propose an alternate take for what the Book of Boba Fett could have been instead of what we got. Instead of Boba Fett staying on Tatooine for the entirety of the series, yeah, and Ace, I'll agree with you there. And I'll bring up your comment here. I thought the world between worlds just removed what was a meaningful character death. I don't ask for characters to die, but I want their death to mean something. Yeah, Ace, I agree. And I'll come back to the fake out deaths in a little bit. Now, do I regard what happened to Boba Fett and how he escaped from the Sarlacc pit as a fake out death? No, because for the longest time, a lot of fan theories and some fan fictions have been written, and there was actually a novel or a couple of novels that focus on that particular story point. What if Boba Fett did get out of the Sarlacc pit? What would he do? What would have happened? One that I particularly remember, and it's a book I used to own. I don't have it anymore. I wish I still did, and that was the Tales of the Bounty Hunters. I would have rather seen Boba Fett, get himself healed up. You know, the first 3 or 4 episodes where we have flashbacks to Boba with the Tusken Raiders, that was some interesting storytelling because they treat him like an outcast. They treat him horribly, but he finally earned his place amongst that tribe. That for me was a good narrative. But instead of keeping Boba on Tatooine, instead of him trying to fight for this other settlement called Mos Pelgo, instead of having the Mandalorian pop up and Grogu pop up and Luke Skywalker pop up, instead of having the story that we got, why don't we have like a revenge story? Boba took out Bib Fortuna. Why don't we take that a step further and have Boba go after the Hutts? Why don't we have Boba resume his life as a bounty hunter? Yeah, Ace, I wish I had never gotten rid of it because I love that book. I read it so many times, Book of the Bounty Hunters. I particularly love the story with IG-88. That for me was awesome. IG-8, one of IG-88's copies gets downloaded into the Death Star 2's main computer. That to me was badass. Absolutely badass. But instead of Boba Fett trying to be a Daio or whatever it is on Tatooine, have him resume his life as a bounty hunter. And have Cad Bane be involved in that story. Not just have him show up for a couple episodes or a couple of scenes at the end of the series, but have it be a battle between the bounty hunters, between Boba and Cad Bane. And have that be the focus of the series. Even use that Tusken village once Boba leaves and everything, and he gets healed up in the Bacta tank in Jabba's palace. Have him go back to where the village is and see it destroyed. And Boba find out that it was Cad Bane who did it, and have it be a revenge story. Instead of him trying to go up against the Black Sun and stop spice trading on Tatooine and all this other nonsense, let's have a revenge story with Boba Fett instead. That to me would have been a hell of a lot better. And if you still wanted to have the Mandalorian pop up, as a stinger scene as well, or a post-credit scene, you can do that. But I tried to look at the series as a whole. I watched it all the way through as everything is instead of episode by episode like when it was originally released. And I was like, okay, where could this have been done better? And would it have been better to cut out the episode with the Mandalorian, have it be put in the book, have it put in season 3 of the Mandalorian, have Din going to look for Grogu and finding him with Luke and have that whole conversation between Din Djarin and Ahsoka, everything as a flashback in season 3 of the Mandalorian instead of plopping it smack dab in the middle of the book of Boba Fett. That killed the entire narrative flow of the book of Boba Fett. Because now you've got
you've got a whole episode dedicated to the Mandalorian. And yeah, I'll say it. Him getting his new fighter and building and rebuilding it with Peli, that was cool. I'm not going to discredit that, but it was put in the wrong place. Completely and utterly put in the wrong damn place. You don't plop. It's the same thing with Kenobi. You don't need young Leia. You can have a few scenes with him and a younger Luke, and with Owen and Beru and everything, particularly Owen, because I'll say it. That scene between Obi-Wan and Owen was great. That was a great moment where Owen absolutely owns him. He's like, you want him to train. How'd that turn out with your last apprentice? Because Owen knows that Anakin is Vader. It just... I wouldn't have... I'll say this, Ace. I wouldn't have wanted them to necessarily copy Django or Fistful of Dollars, but they could have borrowed elements from it and crafted a narrative around that idea. And it would have been a hell of a lot more entertaining than Boba Fett trying to go straight. Boba Fett's a badass. Boba Fett just stone cold murdered Bib Fortuna. Not that Bib Fortuna is a decent guy himself. He got fat and he's a scumbag. I mean, for Pete's sakes, he keeps one of his own race as a slave. That's a scumbag to me. So Bib Fortuna getting taken out by Boba Fett? I have no problem with that. Not a lick. But it's... I don't know what's happened to Star Wars. But I just know that as I said in the description, as I said at the start tonight, I have tried to be patient. I have tried to give current Lucasfilm, a chance. But I feel like my patience is reaching or has reached its limit. I am tired of being disappointed or getting a show or a movie or a series that's lacking in quality. And I did a short and everything, and I'll discuss this here. I recently watched Solo, a Star Wars story, and I did enjoy it. Was it the greatest piece of Star Wars media ever? No. But was it the trash fire or the dumpster fire or the whatever fire that everybody else on the internet and on social media claimed it was? No, it was not. The actor who played young Han, Alden Ehrenreich, I think he did a decent job. Donald Glover Jr., I think that's the actor's name, or Donald Glover, as a young Lando Calrissian, there were some elements of his character that I liked. And I mean that sincerely. Where there's some elements of his character that were a bit lacking or a bit out of place for this character, yes, there were. Ace, that's true. Because, I hold to this tenet, I hold to this creed. You do not love a thing because it's perfect. You love a thing in spite of its flaws. I have and always will love Star Wars. I love Star Wars when it's good. And I will even love Star Wars when it's less than. But they have, over the last several years, I have found that the quality of what they have given us as a fandom to become increasingly lacking. Whether it be plagiarism, whether it be a lack of creativity, or even be something that might be that seemingly might be minor compared to some other people, as decanonizing the old expanded universe. To say I'm mad would be a cheap out. It isn't just pure anger that I'm feeling. It's disenfranchisement. I feel like I have become disenfranchised from this universe that I love. And I never thought in my entire lifetime that I would feel this way about Star Wars. I never thought in my lifetime that I would say or think the words I hate or I dislike Star Wars. I never thought that would happen. And I know there have been people who have felt this way a longer time than me. For some of us, it went back all the way to the day when George Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney. For some, it was when the old expanded universe was decanonized by current era Lucasfilm. For others, it was the sequel trilogy. And for others, it might be something more recent. Most of you know why I love Star Wars, and especially the original trilogy, as much as I do. But for those of you who don't, let me explain briefly. Return of the Jedi was one of the last couple of films that I got to see with my father before he died. Star Wars was something that me and my dad, and even my mom, but especially me and my dad, bonded over in the months and the years that we had after his heart transplant surgery. We would go to the mall, we would have lunch, we would go to the local KB toy store at that mall, and we'd go in and he'd buy me he was like, pick you out something. And oftentimes I go to the Star Wars section. I get a figure, or some instances I might get something a little bit bigger when mom and dad could afford it. Jedi, in spite of the whatever flaws people seem to have with it, to me, Jedi has no flaws. Return of the Jedi has no flaws. Jedi gave me the means to find a way to mourn my father's death. When Luke mourned Anakin, I mourned with him. When I went and saw the original, the special editions of the original trilogy, I did it because, one, I had never seen, except for Jedi, the original trilogy on the big screen. And because I knew if Dad was still alive, we would have gone together. When the prequels came out, I was there opening day for every single one of them. For hours Phantom Menace. I dressed up in cosplay as a Jedi Knight to see Attack of the Clones. And I went to see Revenge of the Sith, decked out in my Darth Maul t-shirt with my double-bladed lightsaber in hand. Because that's how much I love Star Wars. I was there opening day for The Force Awakens. I was there opening day for Rogue One. I was there opening day for The Last Jedi. And I have a picture of me and one of my closest and dearest friends and Man Ambassador with a group of cosplayers before we went and see The Last Jedi. I will always be a part of this fandom. And I will always count my fellow fans as my peers. We may agree to disagree, and we may disagree, period. But if you love the sequel trilogy, that is your prerogative. I will never hold that against you. I might look at you a little funny, but I will never hold it against you. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same way, Ace. But it kills me now that after all these years, I have become disenchanted with the Star Wars universe and with what Lucasfilm has brought us. It brings me no joy to say these things. Well, okay, maybe it does bring me a little bit of joy. Okay, joy is maybe not the right word. Because I have critiqued other films and called them out for where they lacked, for their poor story choices, for the poor writing, for bad CGI, for bad costume design, and so on. But I never honestly felt that I would feel this way about Star Wars. And that's what kills me inside. To know that something that I once regarded so highly and that I loved so deeply, I have now become apathetic to. That the people in charge, the writers, the directors, the executives, have pretty much just driven a metaphorical stake through this universe that I once loved so deeply. And I have to ask myself the real question. And I think it's true for not just myself, but for a lot of fans. Is it time to take my toys and go home? Is it time to turn my back on the Star Wars franchise? And is it time to spend less time focusing on giving attention to stories that are lacking and focus on not only other franchises that I still care about, but also writing my own story that I still care about? That's the big thing. when I saw the trailer for Ahsoka a few months ago, I was like, this looks like it could be really exceptional. But now that I know what it's going to lead into, and I there's been this stubborn streak in me that has said that I can disconnect these live action series and so on from the sequel trilogy. But it's becoming harder every day, or with I'm speaking a bit hyperbolically here. It's becoming harder every day to disconnect The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi and probably Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew, whatever that turns out to be, and whatever Dave Filoni's film is going to be, and I'm not even going to pay attention to the Rey film. It will come and go out of theaters, even if it goes into production. I will not watch it. I vehemently refuse to. I never thought I would say that about a Star Wars movie. But I will not watch the Rey movie. It will come and go out of theaters if it goes into production, and I will not lay eyes on it. I would rather write my version of Rey's story. I would rather write my version of Rey and Finn's and Poe's and the original cast story rather than watch somebody else's. I would rather pour my talents and my creativity that I've worked hard to develop over the last couple of years into a story that I care about rather than see someone else's. And I would rather add my voice and my thoughts and my dreams and my hopes into a story that I care about. Because I don't care about the Rey movie, and if what Dave Filoni does with his movie is any indication by the title, I know all it is the title. I know it's tying together all of the series that have come out thus far. But I can't and I won't give my time and attention to this universe anymore. Not as long as the creative decisions that are being made go forward. I will not give my time to anything else that current era Lucasfilm releases. Whether it's a movie, it is a streaming series. Video game, that's another issue altogether. But I think at the end of the day, I think I maybe need to think about it a little bit longer, but I think it is time for me to close the book on Lucasfilm's Star Wars content and make my own. Because at least that I still have a passion and a drive for. And that's I think that's where I'm going to end the editorial. And I'm gonna drop the link. So if anybody that's in the chat right now wants to hop in, whether it's you, George, or Ace, or whoever else is here, wants to share your thoughts, by all means, here is the link. All are welcome to use it or not use it. I was deciding whether I wanted to drop the link, but I think I do. So, and I'll pop over here to the YouTube tab. But I'll say this for one thing further. If y'all are wondering what's this story I've been talking about, well, for those of you that may not know, back about a year or so ago, it's been longer than that now. I started working on my own version of The Rise of Skywalker, except I didn't call it The Rise of Skywalker. I call it The Unity of the Force. Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about, Ace, and I've been watching that one myself. And the guy, the group that's been working on that, they have done an absolutely stellar job. But to give y'all a brief synopsis and maybe tell y'all a little bit about Unity of the Force. It started off just simply as a fan fiction, nothing more. And then I thought to myself, what if I turned this into a script for an audio drama? For something that I would do on the channel here. And I did I made an effort to do at least part of that story on my own. And I was like, this is good, but I feel it could be better. So I privated all those videos and I kept chugging along, writing my script. And now Madam Ambassador is in the process of editing that script into something that can be easily read and easily followed for a cast. And hopefully within a year or so, hopefully before that, I can start casting. I've already cast a few parts as it is. Zach Leary, who was in here earlier, he's on the cast. My good friend at Mountains of Elysium, he's on the cast. Tim of Tim's Talk and everything, I've recruited him and everything. But to give y'all just give y'all a taste of Unity of the Force, let me bring up the script here. I'll pull up a couple of excerpts, and I won't do the voices, but I'll tell you who's talking and what they're and who and whatnot. I'll give you an idea of the setting. So just give me a minute, guys. Pull this up. But I've never written a script. I've never written anything creatively in my entire life. The majority of my writing has been academic. But I try to write these characters in a way that made sense to me and made sense to the narrative that I wanted to create. And that has been my goal from the start. To make these characters relatable and make them make sense. Oh, I'm in the wrong file. And I won't lie to y'all. It hasn't been easy. It's been hard trying to write these characters, make them make sense, and make the story make the story that they exist in make sense as well. It's not been easy, but I will say it's been worthwhile, and it's been a lot more creatively fulfilling than watching what Lucasfilm has been doing lately. That's for damn sure. Like I said, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. because there have been these shows or anything that have been released on Disney Plus I did enjoy. I mean that wholeheartedly and sincerely. But at the same time, it's been it's becoming increasingly difficult. Ah. Hey, Ace, hey, bud.
Hey, thanks for letting me join in, Ambassador. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I got a new tablet and it doesn't have a headphone jack, so I wasn't sure if the audio would pick up or not. Sorry for the extensive
Yeah.
comments in the chat.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Anything. I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to know what me that went on for an hour plus or anything, sharing
Oh,
my
good.
discontent and my thoughts and everything about, as I said, current era Lucasfilm. So,
Mhm.
but what's on you? What's
Say that again. You cut out for a second.
hang on? I have a file over. Might be cutting in and out. What are your thoughts on or oh, go away. Not you.
Oh,
Hang on. Your thoughts on what I've mentioned or whatever. So
well,
go ahead, Ace.
my cutoff. You've had more patience than me. Like when I first became disillusioned with the direction Lucasfilm has been taking the Star Wars franchise, it began to creep in after I saw The Force Awakens a couple times in theaters. Because believe me, when I saw the movie, I loved it. But then each time I saw it, the cracks were showing more and more, and I thought something's off, and I just can't put my finger on it. And then I thought, well, maybe I just saw it too many times in theaters and I burned myself out. So I'll wait till it's on Blu-ray, and then because I saw it in theaters like probably 6 times or so like that. Then it comes on Blu-ray. All right, cool. And then no more cracks I was noticing. And then I thought, what is wrong with this? So like, what am I? What was just not clicking? Then someone mentioned, oh, it's because it's a soft remake of A New Hope, and that's it. And I thought, well, maybe it'll get better in time. Like maybe the next movie will pick up. And then Rogue One, obviously, I could still enjoy Rogue One. I liked it when I saw it.
I do.
Began to notice quicker that it has flaws, but those flaws are actually forgivable to me, and I can at least
Yeah.
go back and watch Rogue One, even though I haven't done that since God knows when, probably since before I moved to South Carolina, so before 2019, and
Last
well,
time I mhm. Just as the last time I watched Rogue One was actually last year when I did a review of it and everything for the for May the 4th. So,
yeah,
but go ahead.
I think I remember that stream, but The Last Jedi, that was the straw that broke the Bantha's back. One viewing, and because I didn't go in with the movie with the idea of hating, because I will say months beforehand, I thought, like how I was beginning to have problems with the Star Wars franchise. I thought maybe I should see if it comes out in theaters. Maybe I should like see it by myself and not with an audience, so that I get any reaction I have is my own reaction, so I'm not manipulated by subconsciously, because that's what everyone else in the audience is, not necessarily like clapping at the crowd pleaser moments, but due to some miscommunication with some friends of mine, yeah, I went and saw it, and they invited my mom because she saw Force Awakens with me in theaters. And like I said, I was mortified after just one viewing. I've never seen that movie again. Closest I've seen is clips and tearing that movie apart. I do not look up clips of that movie. I do not want to like waste more thought on it than I need to. And I skipped Solo just because no, I'm not. I swore after Last Jedi, I am done with the Star Wars movies. I will never see another Star Wars movie again unless Kathleen Kennedy's fired or Ryan Johnson and no, not or and Ryan Johnson doesn't get any other Star Wars movie, let alone a trilogy. So
Yeah.
I washed my hands of it. I even stopped reading the comics, and I partially regret that because I missed out on that volume 2 of the Darth Vader book, which takes place between episode 3 and 4, and supposedly that was very good. But after I moved down to South Carolina, and Disney Plus was then a thing, and we all went in the into being like introverts because of a certain thing I don't think I should say, because it hurt. The algorithm says, okay, we're gonna snack this weekend.
What the virus?
Yeah, okay, I'll say it. The pandemic. Who am I kidding?
Just say it that way.
Yeah, I'm not.
At this point, I don't think anybody cares, much less YouTube.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But anyway, Disney Plus happened, and I basically didn't watch Mandalorian, wasn't interested. And then one friend, well, actually, it was a couple guys that said, "No, I'll give it a chance. It's actually really good." I thought, okay, I'll give it a chance. And first season, okay, it was great, but they kind of made it overrated. And I felt that the second episode with around hiding with the fish farm I thought it was some character development, and they said, "Oh, it's the worst episode." You guys don't appreciate character development, but I'm rambling. So I had thought maybe there's some hope with the shows. That was a foolish hope on my personal part, because season 2 I thought was a step down from season 1. It had much more problems, but a lot of fan service to make up for it, especially the final episode. And Book of Boba Fett said, no, bye-bye. I did see Bad Batch, which was just mediocre. I mean, basically the A-Team in space, good concept, but they throw a kid in. Come on. And then
go ahead. Go ahead.
And then Visions.
No, you go ahead.
I didn't care for Visions. There was like 2 good episodes, and I love anime, but it didn't do nothing for me. I won't say what episodes I liked and didn't like.
Visions season 1 and season 2, I have enjoyed those. There have been a couple of episodes in both of those I did not care for, but overall, I would say there have been more good episodes with Visions season 1 and 2 than there have been bad ones. That's
what I've heard. I'm not interested though.
And hey, that's fine. The thing for me, as I mentioned, my previous history with the OT and the PT and everything, I won't rehash it here. Force Awakens, we all know what happened. It broke the damn internet, and it was like fight. You had to fight the internet to get your damn tickets, and we finally did. Me and Mam Ambassador, we got our tickets opening night, and we walked out, and we were happy. It was good. We enjoyed it. The one big glaring issue that I had, and that's the same issue that everybody else had, was of course Rey. She started out fine, but then she started using the Force, and then she started using a lightsaber. I'm like, what the hell is this? And that's that particular issue has been critiqued to death, and I'm not going to add more here. I will say this in terms of what I have done with Rey for my story. I made her, and it's not hard to make a character flawed, but you have to make the flaws believable. That's the thing. You have to make the flaws believable. And not, because this isn't like a major major spoiler for my story or anything, because eventually everybody's going to see and hear this and everything, as this will be released and everything. I will do this. She isn't Palpatine's daughter, per se.
Don't you mean granddaughter?
Well, no, because here's the thing. A clone is still a clone of the original person. This isn't like
right.
It was just a younger version of himself that had a child. So technically it is Palpatine's daughter. But instead of it being her parents that are killed, I cut out the concept of parentage altogether and the idea of Palpatine procreating whatsoever. I made her the product of a genetics program that was being done by the Empire, the old Empire, the old Imperial regime, and it was Palpatine's DNA that was, or genetic material that was implanted into a female Imperial officer. And then what ends up happening is she's taken away from that officer and she's pretty much experimented on, and she's left in an Imperial facility on Jakku, and either the rest of the staff at that facility runs off or is killed, and she's left in that facility alone. This is going to be one of the main plot point of the first part of my trilogy.
Yeah.
But she has to come to terms with being a Palpatine. And at the end of my story, she does pick a different name. But I build a narrative where she doesn't take a name that she has no license or ownership of. But she takes a name, and I won't spoil that part here. But she takes a name of a family that she develops a deep personal tie to and who she comes to care for deeply. And by the end, you're like, yes, this makes sense. It isn't one scene at the end of a movie and you have two Force ghosts off in the distance just standing there silently. And she's just like, oh, I'm Rey Skywalker. No. My payoff is a hell of a lot better than what they do.
Sounds better. I mean, like I said, did not see the Rise of Skywalker, or better known as Rise of Palpatine. So, but it's definitely better.
Here's the thing, and most people don't know this, or at least I haven't made this common knowledge. It's not because I'm ashamed of it or anything. I saw The Last Jedi twice. Once was on opening night with Ambassador and one of my friends, and everything that I mentioned that we got that group picture with those cosplayers. Mm-hmm. And we walked out and we were like, holy freaking crap, what are they going to do now? Because it killed Snoke. The issue with Luke did not creep in until it wasn't until in between viewings, because we went to see it when it came out, and then we went, I think it was like on Christmas Day. It was me, the missus, and Mother Ambassador, and we went to see Last Jedi, and that's when it clicked. And I didn't watch any reviews on YouTube. I didn't watch any commentaries on Last Jedi or anything else. I came to this myself, and it was this point. Now, regardless of what perspective you look at this from, whether it is Ben's or it is Luke's, regardless of the expression on Luke's face, this does not make sense. Him wanting to commit fanticide, kill a member of his own family, when he went to the utmost ends to save his own father. When he marched into what was seemingly a death trap with Vader and the Emperor, with the sole goal of one, trying to distract the Emperor and Vader from what's going on with the rebellion, even though that doesn't quite work, but also to try and save his father's life. And then, with no build-up, with no explanation, we have one scene taken from two different perspectives where Luke considers, and that myself is that's the worst crime of all. You don't consider killing a member of your own family because of a bad feeling or having a bad vision in the Force. Because let's be honest, visions in the Force are not always accurate, and they don't always tell you everything.
As
don't
Yoda
listen.
said.
Always in motion is the future.
Mm-hmm.
So they completely negated that whole point and everything from the get-go. Instead of Luke trying to reason with Ben, trying to reach out to him like a uncle to his nephew, like one family member to another, he stands there in Ben's hut with his lightsaber in hand, whether it's ignited or otherwise, and considers cutting down his own sister's child. That makes no bloody sense in terms of the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, if you one thing, I mean, the movie is unredeemable, but if you one thing, if he just stood there, like, while Ben was asleep and felt what the vision was, and thought, didn't turn on his lightsaber, but thought, like, maybe I should talk to him. Someone would just say, just kill him now and save the galaxy the trouble, but that would be wrong. Uh,
Yeah.
I gave my own father a chance, and I mean, your
I give
idea.
my own nephew.
Yep. The new Jedi Order like handled Luke's relationship with his nephew Jason and him turning to the dark side a lot better. Jason full out
Yeah, I've
murdered
read
Luke's wife. So
Yeah,
how
I've
it
read
turns out. Like
Yes.
Luke struck down Lumia, and that pushed him close to the dark side. So he didn't even want to confront Jason, even though Jason murdered his wife, because he knew that would really push him. And he was exiled by the Alliance and whatever, or by Dala's Alliance, I should say. And but the thing is, the Jedi Order wasn't wiped out. He left it in good hands, and he wasn't alone. Ben was with him, Ben Skywalker, his son, and they didn't just wander aimlessly or go to a planet to die. They actually traced Jason's steps to find out why he turned to the dark side, and they found a lost tribe of the Sith. So there was some productivity.
Yeah, and they've tried to, with the comic books and stuff, they've tried to fill in that gap, but I'm sorry, it's not enough. At least with what I've did now, I haven't finished my story. I've only written the ending, and now I've got to go back and write the beginning of it. But I laid enough clues for myself to lay the groundwork. I don't make Snoke a disposable villain. He's there from the start to the finish. And I give him a believable and a compelling backstory, something that a whole team of writers and two directors, well, including three directors, but one that stepped down because of creative differences.
Colin Trevorrow?
Colin Trevorrow couldn't do. Okay, I'll say this. I'm currently watching it's a animated version of the Duel of Fates script, and it's actually pretty good. Is it perfect? No, but it's a hell of a lot better than The Rise of Skywalker.
That's not saying much from what I understand.
Yeah, but here's the thing. What Colin Trevorrow tried to do with his script, I've heard it read, and I've read bits and pieces of it. No, I won't borrow from it because I have some creative integrity, for Pete's sake. Now, have I borrowed bits and pieces? Did I borrow? Okay, the most I borrowed from The Rise of Skywalker was Ben goes to Exegol. That's it. Everything else, completely different. I borrowed some planets from the movie. I've got Octu in there. I've got Exegol in there. But everything else, I've either mined from the old expanded universe, maybe pulled a few pieces here and there from the new expanded universe, the pieces, planets, places primarily, but no plot points.
There you go.
And I've tried to craft. I've crafted a story that's at least a hell of a lot more compelling than what current era Lucasfilm has done. It hasn't been easy, but it's been rewarding. I'll say this. And, I originally was gonna bring up. I was going to read a couple of excerpts from my fan fiction before you got in here. So let me pull that up real quick, Ace. And I'll just get your. If you want to, you can react to it. So it just
Yeah.
takes a minute.
It's probably better than anything I came up with. Do you remember?
Ambassador.
What?
Well, okay. I'll read you the intro. I'll read you the.
Okay.
No, you're fine, Ace. You're fine. All right, I'll read you the intro. Then I'll pull up I'll read a couple of excerpts here and okay. Here's the intro to Unity of the Force, and that's the title of my story. Over a year has passed since the events on Crate. Across the galaxy, the First Order and New Republic rebuilt their forces in an effort to liberate or enslave the citizens caught in their ongoing conflict. On the world of Octu, Luke Skywalker has been guiding the young Force wielder Rey, aiding her in the development of her skills in the Force. Bringing fresh insight into Rey's training, Luke, along with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda, seek to break the cycle of conflict that has existed among the adherents of the Force. Kylo Ren has been plagued by a voice in his mind, beckoning him to the unknown regions of the galaxy. Leaving the shipyards of Fondor, he travels to a world nearly forgotten by the galaxy. A world whose very name makes the May people's blood run cold. Exegol. Better than a lot better than the dead speak.
That's it's a better intro than what I came up like that first stream I ever did with you. I think that was on my channel where I told you like some stuff where I borrow elements from like where I say, oh, Snoke was really Plagueis the whole time and he just faked death but came back, and just goes to show the power to cheat death is an ability only I have achieved, or something like that. And I told you someone had this fan fiction of, Rey was always Luke's student, and I threw in the explanation of, oh, she was trained, but she doesn't remember because of a Jedi trial where she had her mind wiped and had to come back or something like that. And then I threw in my 2 cents of, oh, that Luke we saw wasn't the real Luke. That was his clone created through the dark side with Sith alchemy and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. That what you came up with is better than what I came up with.
I tried. Like I said, I've tried my darndest to make it good. So it hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it, because for the first time okay, let me get back in here, because there's one part in particular, and this won't reveal any big spoilers. I do have like 2 or 3 characters in this that are very, very powerful and everything, and I don't want to spoil them here and everything. I'll put it in the private chat. Let me get down to this one scene and everything, because this scene's honestly really good. No, I don't want to use that part because that reveals too much. Come on, where's part 6 at? Here we go. Okay. This is part 6 of Unity of the Force. I won't read the whole thing or anything, but I'll read a part of it. This involves Ben and the Force Ghost of Anakin. Ben's gaze is fixed on the ghost of his grandfather, dumbstruck that after all the horrendous acts he has carried out, the man he revered his whole life stands before him. Numerous thoughts race through his mind as he seeks answers to why Vader, Anakin, is before him now. Why are you here, grandfather? Because your mother, uncle, and myself still believe in you. Luke never cared about me. Only his students, his academy. He didn't treat me like a nephew. He didn't treat me like family, just as another student. My parents abandoned me. All I am, I did myself. It's Kylo Ren that the galaxy fears. It's the First Order that will bring stability. And unlike you, I won't let love cloud my vision. I embrace power. I embrace the path that Vader walked. That's Snoke talking, not you. He's poisoned you against your own family. Manipulates you very much the same way I was. Ben, you have gone down a road far too many, including myself, have traveled. Ben starts to speak and falls silent. I'm your path to power and knowledge. They have nothing for you. They fear the power you wield. This fool was weak and chose compassion over strength. Sensing Snoke's presence in Ben's mind, Anakin tries to reach out to his grandson. My friend, my mentor Obi-Wan tried to reach out to me all those years ago on Mustafar. But I was too blinded by fear and ambition to listen. I caused the death of my wife, your grandmother. I killed people I called brother and sister. Learn from my mistakes, Ben. Don't repeat them. You were weak and afraid, and I used that against you to turn you to the dark side with Sidious's help. Through Ben's mind, Anakin tries to peer into Snoke's, and for a moment he succeeds. I know this presence. I know you. Both of you be silent, Ben screams. With his mind stilled, he contemplates his choices. Eternal life is within my grasp. All I have to do is bring Rey and Luke to him. I can destroy the rebellion, Luke and Snoke, once I have what I want from him. The galaxy will bend to my will forever. Rey will either join me, or I will break her and make her my apprentice. Is eternal life worth the sacrifice of your family and your future? Ben looks at Anakin, his face contorted in an expression of doubt and fear, concealed by his mask. Ben struggles with the conflict within him. Light and shadow clash within him. It isn't that easy. Luke will never forgive me for destroying the school, killing my fellow students, turning my friends into the Knights of Ren, killing Dad. That moment flashes in his mind. How would I face them? Ben, we want you to come home. Your uncle, your mother, and I talked about this before I even came. Your mother knows there's still hope for you, just as Luke did for me. Put aside Kylo and come home. Silence falls in Ben's quarters. He's right, Ben. A familiar voice whispers. Suddenly, his comlink sounds, and he composes himself. Yes, what is it? Supreme Leader, 2 shells are approaching. Call sign indicates it is your knights. Very well. Give them clearance to dock. Ben shuts off the comm abruptly. So what are you going to do, Ben? A long pause follows Anakin's question. Again, Snoke seeks to influence him. You can succeed where your grandfather failed. You can fulfill the destiny that calls to you. What about your legacy? What about Vader? Ben, don't you understand? I'm not Vader, nor was he me. Vader was a prison that Sidious trapped me in with my own help. Vader died in an instant when I chose to save my son and daughter, your mother and uncle. My legacy is my family. You are a part of it. You have a chance to create your own part of that legacy. Ben sums up the force in his mind and drives Snoke out. With his mind his own again, Ben focuses on Anakin. No longer does he see the myth of Vader. Instead, he sees his grandfather, Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight. Activating the lock on his helmet, Ben removes it and lets it drop to the floor. Silence lingers in the room as grandfather and grandson share a moment. No words are spoken. Then through the Force, 3 words are uttered. Let's go home. But instead of it being spoken by Anakin, this time, it's Ben Solo.
That was very good. I'm speechless. It was so good.
Do you want to say hello to the chat to my good friend and fellow cast member for Unity of the Force, Mountains of Elysium? It's good to see you, buddy. I know it's rather late over here on your side of the pond. And Elysium, I want you to know that the script is coming along. It's just taking a Ambassador a little bit longer. I might take the weight off her shoulders because she's going back to school to finish her master's in writing and everything. I might take up the baton and finish the rest of that editing that script myself so we can get this ball rolling. It took me 2 or 3 days just to write that one section. And that's not the whole, that's all, not all of part 6. There's actually a very I'll say this. That was just the tip of the iceberg for Ben. Ben's redemption is not easily gained, but by the end, he does earn it. And there's even there's Ben and Finn come to respect each other. That's a hell of a thing.
That is interesting, especially because it kind of ties into Force Awakens with how they kind of set up them to be rivals towards the beginning.
Well, let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I won't read the whole section, but Finn actually becomes a student. And guess who one of his teachers is? Anakin.
Oh, that part I did not expect.
He has Luke helps train him as well, and there's a couple other characters. I'll put the other characters and everything in the private chat because I don't want to spoil it. I might get the spelling wrong and everything.
having a hard time trying to pull it up. Let me see.
I haven't put it in yet.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood what you said.
I don't want this to be spoiled.
It makes sense.
Just don't say it out loud when you see it.
I won't
Oh,
read
I
it out
ask.
loud. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's in the private chat now.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that character is one that I think is overrated, but that's just my opinion. I don't dislike the character. I just feel overrated. That's all.
That's fair. I will. Okay, I'll say this, and I won't tell you who. One of those characters dies.
That's fine. And like I said in the chat, I just feel I have no problem with character deaths. I just feel that they should mean something, like either like this is their last battle
Theirs
and they
does.
know it, or they're trying to protect someone and they go down, they die with their boots on, they go out swinging, yeah, or they die,
Mhm.
to symbolize that you're on your own from now on. Like in this series, I want to write a comic for. I've been
Mhm.
uh, working on it for a while. I have a couple characters, and one of them is very much a mentor Obi-Wan type figure, and
Well,
he does die at one point, but I'm keeping that in, and then I was going to have the love interest of the main character die later on, and figure that's his catalyst to go and travel, and finally go to Japan, which was some to put his mentor's remains at rest and find a new mentor that taught him as well, so that he can go undergo training. But I
Mhm.
realized, no, I don't want to kill off his love interest because that would I thought I like this character. I kind of like this dynamic I set up, so I don't want that to happen, especially because the circumstances of why she's in the position she was in that was going to cause her to die. I figured, no, make it seem like she is, but she's not. She's alive, but there is still
Mhm.
consequences to the conflict that, but like basically she gets kidnapped by a bad guy, and no, not molested or anything sexually related, but like she was, but basically because of that conflict it kind of affects her, and her relationship with the main character falls apart. She's like, I have to leave, I'm sorry, and she basically moves to another state, and but still, realizes I
Mhm.
couldn't protect her, and this life I planned for both of us isn't going to happen. I have no choice but to carry on with what I was going to give up. It's all I have left.
Yeah. And do you want to say hello to the chat to another good friend or anything, Tim? Of Tim's
Yeah.
talk, Tim. Uh, Tim,
Hi, Tim.
I just read part of your dialogue, buddy. So it's because you haven't said otherwise. You're still playing. Tim's actually doing the part of Kylo Ren slash Ben Solo.
Okay, so is this gonna be like a like I already forgot. Did you say
My
it's gonna be like a voice series, like a
it's gonna be
radio series?
it's gonna be like an old school radio drama. Is what it's gonna be like. I'm gonna try and put together sound effects. I'm gonna have music and so on for it. So
Yeah,
I've still got a lot of casting to do and everything. Um, I've got, like I said, I got Tim, I got Elysium, I've got Zach. I've got a few other people who have mentioned that they want to be on the they want to be on the be a part of the cast as well, and what
I'd be
have you.
open for it.
I'll send you the cast list. I'll send you a few other pieces and anything to take a look at. So,
Yeah, I don't
but
expect to be a character, but if you need like voices for aliens, I mean, I can do silly and
well,
weird voices.
here's okay. Let me not so much a plot point, but a interesting concept that I introduced because there is battle scenes in this story, and they are at times very intense. This is after this is still during the course, but it's kind of after Ben's redemption. The First Order launches an attack on Kashyyyk, and the New Republic. I don't call it I do reference it as the Rebellion, but it's also the New Republic because the New Republic doesn't get destroyed in one shot in my story. That does not happen. There are no super weapons in my trilogy. So, because I'm tired of super weapons. I really, really, really am. But the First Order tries to invade Kashyyyk. Ben goes with Chewbacca and a task force to help the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. Not to mention the New Republic also has an outpost on Kashyyyk. There is a part where Ben goes up against another one of the Knights of Ren because a pair of them are there on Kashyyyk aiding in the attack because they're trying to draw Ben out because he's defected or turned against them. So they're trying to figure out where they can hit that would draw Ben out. Hit Kashyyyk. Why? Chewbacca. What ends up happening is that particular night has, this is going to be gruesome, but it has its place. That particular knight has his arms and legs ripped off. He has those arms and has those wounds cauterized by Ben's lightsaber. Because he doesn't get rid of his other lightsaber. He keeps it, but he builds he doesn't build, but he gets another lightsaber during the course of the story, and he becomes a dual wielder with lightsabers. They cauterize the wounds so that knight can survive, and then they send that knight in a First Order transport back to one of the flagships from the task force from the First Order. And it arrives in the hangar bay. The bay door opens to the transport, and there are a whole bunch of officers and soldiers that see that knight. And one of them a bunch of them walk in and drag him out just before he dies, and he says, "I am a warning to anybody in the First Order or the Imperial Remnant that tries to invade Kashyyyk. This is what will happen to you if it happens again." And he dies shortly thereafter. There are what would be regarded as some somewhat gruesome scenes in this story.
Dilapidation isn't too gruesome. It's better than this one fool's fan fiction for, what if the prequels were different? And he had this moment where, Sidious rips Darth Maul's spine out through his mouth or something like that. I thought, dude, that's going too far. Like this,
Okay.
it was asinine. But it was what you were saying. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, I'll tell you there's another particularly gruesome scene, but I won't give you the reason for why it happens because it would spoil something. Kylo ends up killing. He ends up killing a First Order officer. I won't say who because it would be spoiling something, and this is too good of a plot point to spoil for everybody. But what he ends up doing is he levitates this officer in midair with the Force, simultaneously choking him and electrocuting him with Force lightning, because Kylo can use Force lightning at this point. He does this for a good... he tortures this officer. This is not a quick and easy death because Kylo's pissed. Really, really pissed because this officer failed in what they were supposed to do. And how I describe it, the the air becomes saturated with the smell of scorched flesh, because that's how intense the force lightning that Kylo is using on this officer. He then lifts the officer back in the air, levitates him towards him, and tells him, "You should not have come back," and then decapitates him. So at this point, this officer's flesh is scarred and charred. He's got like second or third degree burns, which are pretty severe from the force lightning that Kylo has used on him.
Mm-hmm.
He's been force choked off and on, and then the coup de grace, he decapitates the officer.
That's good, and it's, like I said, not as overtly gruesome as like other people would have, and like, oh, what if this happened in Star Wars? I mean, it's within the tastefulness, but still like pushing it of the Star Wars.
Because I wanted to show just how intense Kylo's hatred has seemingly consumed him, but part of this is also Snoke's manipulation. Like I said, Kylo has a long road to redemption, but he does eventually get there. Ben, rather, has a long road to redemption, but he does eventually get there. So, and another familiar face popping in, Vienna Wolf. See him, hope you're doing well. And she's said, "Pop in and say hello. Just got in from work. P.S. Disney could have had set the movies well after the original trilogy and the New Republic EU books. Star Wars did that, and they did a pretty good job." Yeah, Fiona, you're not wrong. But I've kind of, ultimately it comes down to this. I just want better stories, I think, is what we all wanted, really. And over the last several years, Lucasfilm has failed.
I think it's just all the big not companies, but pretty much companies and productions that are going on in like major publishers and in Hollywood, and like they're all bankrupt of ideas. You have to look for independent. I mean, there's this one YouTuber, her name is Sound Engraver, and she's a composer, like she's a trained composer, and like she's talked about like the importance of art as well and writing, and she's a big science fiction fan. She's talked about things like Isaac Asimov and how this, that, and the other. And she's said that she's working on a space opera book, and I think it's a series. But if anyone's a science fiction fan or even like a music fan, check out her channel. I highly recommend her, Sound Engraver. Like once if she gets to publish it within a time for her that works, I'm gonna read it, just because it's something that's not the mainstream writer Chuck Dixon. He has a YouTube channel and talks about writing and whatnot, and he no longer works at Marvel and DC. I mean, he did things like Batman, The Punisher, Moon Knight, Robin, Nightwing, Birds of Prey, stuff like that, and he's still writing comics. He did one I did crowdfund on Indiegogo called Two-Fisted Manly Tales with some other artists and writers like Graham Nolan, to name of one, and he also publishes books, Leave on Cade books, which is basically Punisher stories that he can't publish because he doesn't have the rights to Punisher, so they recontextualize them for a new character. It's a great Slav character. I'm looking forward to read. And another YouTuber named the Rageaholic, known mainly as Razor Fist, like he put up an Indiegogo for a Western called Ghost to the Badlands, I believe. And I thought, you know what? It's a Western. I'm reading it. And Professor Geek, another YouTuber, he did a Indiegogo. Oh, okay. You know him. I think I've recommended him. know of, I should say. He did
Yeah.
Tales from the Stack, the horology. Go funded that. I got it. I will say though, it took forever to get it, but I understand he was a busy guy, and my rant is over. Because, well, okay, because my point is, you
Well,
want good content, you don't go for the big leagues anymore.
there are a few independents that I follow. One in particular and everything. You may have heard of, anything. He's been on the channel. It's been a long time since he's been on the channel. That's Adega Outlaw, and he has his channel where he's uploaded a lot of his stuff. He does it as in like an audiobook format where he does a chapter at a time. He does all the voices and so on. And I've actually got one of his book. It's called Evolution. It's part of a series and everything. He's kind of working the same way I am. He's working backwards, or he's working on a non-linear storytelling style. But he's done a lot of good stuff. He does mainly sci-fi, but he's branched off into fantasy. Um, I haven't talked to him in a long time, but I regard him as a friend, and I applaud him for his efforts and his talent because he's one hell of a writer. He's a Elysium and Fiona both know Adega. I think Tim does a little bit, or no, at least knows of him and everything. So I encourage you both go subscribe to Adega's channel and check out his content. He's got all of his stories in playlist order, so you can just listen to it and everything, and you'll be entertained. He has a great he has great writing style and everything, and he builds. He's really good at world building. I've taken quite a bit. I've taken a few notes and everything, and taken not inspiration, but I've taken notes for how he builds his worlds. I've applied it to what I'm doing with my fan fiction writing and everything, because that's kind of where I am. I don't really have the time to like write something original, but I can write fan fiction for universes that I care about or that I love, and obviously the one that I do care about most is Star Wars. So that's kind of where I'm directing my efforts. So, and eventually I'll put this out. I'll do the other two parts, put them out, and I will have added my voice to a choir of others who have poured their passion and their talents into a universe that they care about as well.
Absolutely. And you said you might do it in like a radio show form?
I am going to do it. I am going to do it as a the best way I could describe it is an old school radio drama. Think like
Yeah.
War of the Worlds or The Shadow or something like that. It'll be like an old school radio drama type of thing, just
Yeah,
with
I
a
get
little
that.
more higher production value.
Yeah,
And you'll be able to see everybody.
I've actually listened to some of the old Shadow radio show episodes on Spotify.
That is so good.
Yeah, and actually, Star Wars, actually, the original movie, and I think the entire original trilogy actually had a radio show
Yeah,
adaptation.
it has a
And
radio
supposedly
drama.
the BBC one was actually the best. So you wouldn't be too far off for doing a Star Wars one. Would you upload it to Spotify?
I might. I mean, I might.
Yeah, because there's also because this last year I came across this. It was a Batman story, and it was told like an audio drama. And as far as I know, DC had no affiliation, and it's still up to my knowledge. And it was
Mhm.
it was interesting. It was a different type of story, but I thought, hey, this is actually pretty cool. They're using this villain from Alan Grant's era in the '90s, a Cornelius Stirk, a much forgotten Batman rogue.
Okay, I'm going to read you one more
Oh yeah,
section if you
yeah,
want to. If you want to hear. Oh,
I'm
dang it!
all
I
ears.
can't read that. I can't read that part. Okay, maybe I can read that part. I'll just change some names. Okay. I'll just change a few names so it doesn't spoil anything because everybody knows that Yoda's in my story. So, and the Force Ghosts in general are in my story. So, okay, and this is like I said, I mined the old expanded universe for planets and everything, and one of the planets I use is Tython. So Tython is in my trilogy.
Not Corbin?
No, Korriban, no.
Smart move.
But Tython. Because this is called the unity of the Force, I want to kind of go back to the source of, Force wielders before they were known as Jedi or Sith. And everything. Okay. This is set on Tython, and I actually wrote this part in script form, so. In the medical center of the New Republic headquarters, Rey floats in a tank of Bacta fluid. The wound she received on Geonosis and the battle with the Knights of Ren still healing. Nearby, Finn and Yoda sit looking on their sister in the Force and friend. Finn. I should have gone with them. It was foolish of me to stay here and continue my training. They needed me. Yoda. To train one's mind and body is never foolish. Only a fool faces a foe unprepared. Many opportunities for combat still ahead of you there are. For all of us. The staff say a full recovery Rey will make. She is my friend. My place is by her side. By her side you are now. Oh, excuse me, I read that wrong. By her side are you not now? Finn turns to face him. The slightest appearance of a smile on his face. You know what I mean. As do you know my meaning. Poe and Ben enter the med bay and approach Finn and Yoda. Poe can't see Yoda, obviously, because, well, Poe doesn't have the Force. But Ben and Finn can. Ben. How's she doing? The medical droid and the chief medic say she'll be here a couple more days. It was a pretty deep wound. Poe. If you two want to head out, we'll keep her company. The pair stand and exchange farewells to each other. Finn. Thank you, Ben. Ben to Finn. You're welcome. But no thanks are needed. Finn exits and Yoda disappears from view. Poe and Ben take a seat. Poe. You two seem to be getting along, all things considered. It wasn't easy. As a reminder of his time with the First Order. But we've been able to reach an understanding with one another. Poe. The one thing I'll never understand is why you left. You never really gave an explanation. Ben slumps forward and places his hand on the back of his neck, then stands. I have many regrets from the last several years, General. Not to mention I was fooled by Snoke into believing I could be the next Darth Vader. Poe. So what happened? What made you give up all that power? What made you give up all that power and authority? I had a long, difficult talk with my grandfather, Anakin. He showed me the path that he should have taken along all those years ago. So it comes down to family. Ben. Essentially, yes. And I finally realized I was chasing the wrong legacy. Anakin told me that Vader was a prison that he was held in. And that part of him died when he killed Palpatine. Poe. I may never understand what you Force wielders do. But I do understand what family can mean to a person. For me, the New Republic is my family. I'd do anything to protect it. Ben makes a sharp turn towards the tank, holding Ray, and walks to it. Poe, what's wrong? Seemingly ignoring Poe, he focuses on the thoughts coming into his mind. Ray, have you been here long? Just a little while. Finn and Yoda were here earlier. Poe is here as well. Ray, tell him I said thank you for coming to visit. Poe. Ben? Ben! What's going on? Is she all right? She's fine. She says thank you for coming. Anything for a friend. Look, I'm going to go talk with Luke. I'll see you later. Ben and Poe exchange a handshake and he exits the med bay. Ray, any word how longer I'm going to be in here? At least a couple more days. Good. When we're back at the temple, I want to start working on my saber. Ben, I'll have R2 get the tools you'll need. Ray, there's something I've been meaning to say, and this seems like the best time to do it. Ben, go on. When you first arrived here, I was still angry at you for lying to me about where I came from. Even now that I know the truth. It hasn't been easy because some part of me still thought that this was some sort of scheme. Ben, this hasn't been easy for me either. But if the Skywalkers are known for anything, it's not giving up on lost causes. Ray, you're not wrong. I was a complete stranger to your dad and Chewie. Just some lost, frightened girl in a cage on Jakku. Now I have something I never thought I would ever have. They lock eyes through the glass and share a moment. Ben begins to leave Ray so she can rest and continue to heal. 2 words are uttered through their force connection. Brother and sister. I'll stop there.
That was good. You have to excuse me for turning off the camera. I'm trying to prevent myself from making faces. I was trying to hear all of it because I had to go to the bathroom. I didn't want you to stop, and I was just trying to make faces without distracting you or anyone in the chat or make it seem like I'm being a goober.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine, Ace. So, okay. Well, that's all I'm going to share. And I think that's going to be honestly it for tonight because it's getting late. I've already been up since this morning because I had to work today. But
it was good. A good reading, a good stream.
I want to say this in closing to anybody that comes across this stream or for anyone that's listening now. As I said at the start, I will reiterate here. This stream was never intended to attack or insult or belittle my fellow fans. If you have a difference of opinion with me, that is your right and your prerogative to do so, and I will never infringe upon it. My sole goal was to express my own thoughts and my own feelings on the direction that current era Lucasfilm has been going in. What has been of quality and what has been severely lacking. And unfortunately, one side has started to outbalance the other. So going forward, am I completely cutting myself off from Star Wars? No, I can't. That would be like a Jedi or a Sith cutting themselves off from the Force. But I will say this much. I will not be giving as much time or attention to Star Wars as I have in the past. Or at least I will be a lot more discerning of what I do in terms consume. I will always love Star Wars. That will never ever be in dispute. But Lucasfilm, you've got a lot of work to do to gain this fan's confidence and trust back. Because just as, granted, I was not manipulated by a Sith Lord in hiding, but I will echo what Padme Amidala once said. I call for a vote of no confidence in the current leadership of Lucasfilm. You have lost my trust, and you've lost the trust of scores of other fans. So get your house in order, get your heads in order, and start hiring more qualified writers. Do those things, and start putting out better content, and I'll give you the time of day. But until then, time to turn it off. Until that happens, if it ever happens. With that all being said, I hope you all have a great evening. I hope you all enjoyed this stream, both the good and the bad, the rant and the positive, and a sneak preview behind the scenes of Unity of the Force. As always, make sure you like, comment, and if you come across this and you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be respectful, be kind, and be authentic. Do all those things. You always have a place and a home here in the Ambassadorial Wing. We'll see you next time.
Let's be friends.
Have you not?